Hello, everyone. Hi, I'm Mike Elson, founder of VoiceLessons.com. With me today, we have Dr. Matthew Edwards. Matt, welcome to the show again.
Hi, thanks. Glad to be here.
This is my favorite part of the week, Thursday Night Live. This is where we interview people, some notable authors and speakers, and famous people or celebrity type people, the teachers that know a lot and are doing something interesting out there. And then in between that, we like to take the time to answer questions from real singers and real teachers like yourself. So if you do have a question, if you're out there just tuning in, you can drop it in the chat. We do check that time to time. The questions we got today literally just came in this week. We don't make these up, everyone. These are real questions from you. So please participate, ask your questions. This is our favorite time of the week. So I'm going to jump into question number 1 here. First question comes in from Hui Ha. And this is, how do I reach high notes without straining and make it brighter instead of dark?
Good. So this question to me actually kind of brings up 2 possibilities because of the bright versus dark. A lot of times when you hear somebody's saying that their voice, they know their voice has got a dark timbre and the high notes are high, that's actually the problem. You see, our larynx moves with our neck. And I'll grab one of my models here. So the larynx is the vocal folds and everything around it. So we bring this model out a lot. This is an actual larynx model, but that's 4.5 times the size of a real one. This is more real life. And you can see the vocal folds will be right there. And then this is the larynx itself. Now, you can feel that on your own body by putting your fingers right here on your neck. You can find that little notch that sticks out. It's what we often call the Adam's apple, the Eve's apple, the laryngeal prominence. And if you swallow, you're going to feel that it goes up and then it comes down and then it neutralizes in the middle. So the larynx is supposed to move so you can do that, so you can swallow. It also then moves when we make sound, and when it moves, it goes up sometimes, which shortens the vocal tract. So the vocal tract now is the distance between the vocal folds themselves and the opening of the lips. So that's the vocal tract. And if this guy goes up, it shortens the vocal tract. And anytime we shorten the vocal tract, it makes our voice brighter. And anytime we depress it or try to hold it down and lower the vocal tract, it ends up making that distance longer, and that makes our voice darker. And the problem is where those 2 things can become incompatible is that your larynx has to be able to tilt in order to elongate the vocal folds. So the vocal folds are inside of your larynx, these guys right here. And we have a muscle here on the front of the larynx that when it contracts, it helps elongate the vocal folds. It tilts your larynx, and as it tilts, those vocal folds elongate. Now, part of that action also ends up lifting the larynx a little bit. And what we know is that when we go up for higher pitches, a lot of times the larynx will want to rise with it, and that will lead to a brighter timbre. That's what singers without training tend to do. That's why a lot of our rock singers and pop singers, they have bright voices on high notes. Now, opera singers train to not let that happen. So instead of going up for a high note and it getting bright, ma, 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 which is natural movement of the larynx, they try to hold their larynx either neutral, ma, or they try to hold it low, ma, which gives it that real stuck kind of a sound. And so a lot of times if a singer is doing anything that's resembling that low place, they're going to find high notes hard. So, and they'll feel like they're stuck. Whereas if the larynx is allowed to remain more neutral, then the high notes will start to show up. That's just letting it float up. And then in a rock sound, we get, yeah, 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 yeah. And the larynx can glide up a little bit. So that laryngeal movement, Hoy, could be the thing that is actually getting in the way of the high notes. So it could be that you're depressing your larynx a little bit too much when you're going into the upper part of your range. So the best exercise to do is to start breaking that apart, or what are called wobbles. And wobbles make you let go, and it starts to get your larynx comfortable with bouncing. No, we're going to start probably on a small interval. So this is a third. And on the third, we're just going to do ha. And when you're doing that, that larynx should be bouncing up and down. Put your hands there and feel it. Ah. Then we can expand that to a fifth. Ah. You don't usually want to go much further than the fifth. That fifth should be really getting it to bounce. You're going to take that up and down throughout your range. And what that's doing is it's training your body to realize that you can make sound with a bouncy larynx. Because for most styles of singing, we want a bouncy larynx. Classical and opera are about the only ones where we don't want a bouncy larynx. And that's debatable because there's different tonal goals. There are some classical approaches where the larynx is a little bit more movable, and there's some where the larynx is depressed and fixed. It depends on what your tonal goal is and what you're looking for. So you're going to do the wobbles. And as you do those wobbles, it should start to get you some laryngeal freedom. And as you're getting that laryngeal freedom, you may discover that those high notes start to come in. And if they do, then it's probably holding your larynx low with that dark tone that was in the way. Now, a lot of times with the dark tone, we'll go rounded lips. So you may also want to try to go with a brighter spread lip as you do that wobble. And see if that helps brighten up the sound as well. If that solves all your problems, then it was a laryngeal, larynx position issue. If that doesn't solve all your problems, then what we want to do is make sure that we are coordinating your body's ability to elongate the vocal folds and strengthening the muscle that does that. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start in the upper part of your range in a head voice quality. And the reason we're going to use that head voice is because it doesn't put too much pressure on the fold, so it's relatively safe to explore this upper part of your range. And it also teaches your body to release a little bit more air than vibration in the upper part of your voice, which is what you need a lot of times to get these high notes to come in. So we're just going to start working our way up. And as you're moving up in your range, you're strengthening that cricothyroid muscle right here that helps elongate those vocal folds. Then after you're comfortable going up, start trying to do top down. Just work your way down in scale patterns that way as well. Then after you do that every day, go back to doing your wobbles and then try going into your high notes. And after several weeks of starting to really do that stretching work in that upper part of your voice, you should notice that the high notes get a little bit easier. And if they're still not getting what you want, then you're going to have to do some registration work. And we have a lot of questions tonight, so I'm not going to get heavy into registration right now. But I will tell you that if you go back to last week's talk, which was, April, I can't do math, 15th.
Yeah,
15th. Go back to April 15th. You can find us talking a lot about how to develop registration. And if you do that registration work, that will also help you with the high notes as well. Yeah.
I mean, definitely for me, when I hear high notes, I think registration, and you want the elongation of the cricothyroid. But Matt, now when you mentioned the wobble exercise, they're not supposed to sing their songs with that, right? That's just an exercise to check that things aren't stuck or holding. Correct?
Yeah, it comes actually from a voice teacher named Stephen Smith in his book, The Naked Voice. And he talks about this exercise. I picked it up from him. And the idea is that so many times singers hold, right?
Yeah, okay. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
You could be locked or holding that note, and that's what's keeping them from going higher.
Yeah, because what it is that there's 7 muscles that help pull the larynx up and only 3 that help pull it down. And so, sometimes the ones that are pulling it up are pulling too high. That's probably not the case here because they're saying that it's getting dark instead of bright. Mm-hmm. Usually a high larynx is bright. So on the other side, you have people that overly strengthen from choral singing or tucking their chin. They shove their larynx down, and that makes everything darker, as you hear as I just did it just to talk. And when you do that, then you get an artificially depressed sound. And if you try to wobble from there, you feel really stuck. And so you have to get out of that position to free it up. And that starts to let go of those muscles that surround the larynx, what we call the extrinsic muscles. And if those are tight, you're going to have a really hard time balancing registration.
Absolutely. Okay, great. Hope that helps you. Let's jump into our next question. This one comes in from Rebecca Poff. She writes in, what is the best way to keep a classical singer from dropping their larynx when singing CCM?
Good. Hi, Rebecca. So this is going to build off of what we just did. And so the wobbles themselves will start to break that pattern, just like we talked about in the last question. So what you're going to want to do is start getting the person wobbling until you can get that larynx to bounce. A lot of times this will be enough to start getting them to understand how much they're holding on. And as you start integrating this into their practice, you'll start to get the freedom that you need. If that doesn't get you the freedom that you need, we're going to get the larynx to go up by looking up at the sky as if you were swallowing a sword. So you're going to imagine that you're taking, a sword. You look up and you imagine it going down your throat. And when you look up in that position, if you put your fingers on that larynx, you're going to feel that it rises up. In that position, then you're going to vocalize. Now that we've talked about in the past is going to get the constrictor muscles out of the way. The constrictor muscles are the muscles that help you swallow, so it's beneficial to get rid of that constriction tension. It's also can be useful for getting your tongue out of the way if you extend your tongue as well. Teaches your body that it doesn't need the tongue to retract in order to make sound. But it also, one of the potential negative side effects of that exercise for those two reasons is that the larynx will rise. So if you have a singer who is locking their larynx low and you know that's the potential negative side effect of that exercise, you can actually use that exercise to fix this issue. It'll get their larynx to come up and their body will start to learn what that feels like. If they can hold, I've had people figure out how to hold in this position, but they usually say it's real uncomfortable. So they'll go, oh, and they're trying to hold on to it.
It won't happen. Yeah. It'll be.
And so even if that's the case, then what you're going to do is keep using variations of looking up wobbles and what are called velocity exercises. And velocity exercises are the same thing that we do. It's fast. Ha 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 ha. You don't even worry if it's on pitch, because the pitch isn't the point. The point is to get them moving so quickly that their brain can't hold on anymore. And then once you start hearing those moments of freedom, you start pointing it out, going, there, it just let go. Did you notice that? That's freedom. And then the singer will start to realize, oh, that's what that is. Okay. And as their body starts to realize what that is, it's going to be easier for you then to introduce the full movement of the larynx. So then what I do is I go through and use like a 1-2-3-2-1 pattern or a 1-3-5-3-1 pattern and have them make all the different sounds that they might make in different laryngeal positions. So for instance, we sip a string of spaghetti to get to that low laryngeal position. In this case, you would just have them do probably their default. We do whoo, and vocalize them like that and say that's a low laryngeal position. Have them feel on their neck, show them a model, show them an image so they get an accurate body map of what's happening. If you jump on to YouTube and look up MRI larynx, I think you should be able to find my MRI videos of the larynx moving. You can show that to them so that they can see what's going on with that movement. Then the next thing you're going to do is try to get it to go up high. And so the easiest way to get it high is to have them imitate, the taunt sound that you'd hear on, a stereotypical playground scene in a movie. That na 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 na. When you do that sound, the larynx tends to go up. We then vocalize in that so they understand what the up position is. Na 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 na. And then we do in the middle. And so on the middle, what you want to tell them to do is say blah 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 blah. And then say blah while moving the pitch of your voice, but don't let the tone quality change, right? Because when we normally talk, the tone quality gets brighter when we go up there, it neutralizes. And if they're depressed and low, they probably just talk down here most of the time. Instead, what we want to do is get it in the middle and feel that they can go up into the top of their voice like that, but they're going to maintain pretty much the same timbre all the way through their range, even when they speak. And then you put that on pitch. Blah, 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 blah. And you show them how to maintain the even timbre. That's more of a neutral. Then you're going to put all three of them back to back. We're going to do ooh, wah, 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 blah, 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 ooh, wah, 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 blah, 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 ooh, wah, 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 blah, 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 blah. So now you're doing that laryngeal freedom work to give them options. And then when you have those options, you now have a cueing system to work on a phrase. So if they're singing House of New Orleans, right? Pick something in the public domain. If they're singing, there is a house in New Orleans, you could say that's that low position. Let's go to the extreme opposite. I want you to get your larynx up and do it on a wah wah. Wah, 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 wah. Then you say, sing it there. There is a house in New Orleans. And you'll point out that that's clearly too high. But we went to the opposite, and now you're singing without depressing. So now let's go towards the blah. Blah, 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 blah. Then you have them sing the phrase, there is a house in New Orleans. And then you can coach it from there. You could say, I want you to start low and go high. There is a house in New Orleans. And get that larynx to move. And you now have those anchor points of who and wah to guide them in whichever direction you think they need to go for the song that they're singing. So go through that series of exercises. That's going to the wobbles, getting the voice to wobble, doing velocity exercises, howl at the moon. All of those things can help break them out of this lower laryngeal position. Then going through the who, wah, blah series of laryngeal flexibility exercises, and then using those anchor points to help nudge them in the direction you think they need to go for whatever song it is that you're working on.
That's great. Awesome. I love that. I love that set of exercises. So, Rebecca, I hope that helps you and all of our other viewers out there who are tuning in. So let me jump to our next question. Question number 3 today. This one comes in from Phoenix. Right in, if I practice my voice every day on my own without a tutor, how is it possible I can sing?
Right. So, and I think that there's our app was cutting off part of this. I think it also said, how can I sing better? And I think the gist of it was, how can I get better on my own is what I kind of took from this. Right. And so what I would say, Phoenix, is to explore by imitating different kinds of singers' voices that you like that are within your range. Right. So, I'm a baritone, a low baritone. I can't go singing, Adam Lambert songs or Justin Timberlake songs. It's just too high for my range. So I'd have to find singers that are within my vocal range. But when you're first starting out, singing along with them and imitating their voices, not to copy them for your long-term growth, but to try to make sense of what you're hearing and what you think they're doing, can really help you gain a better understanding of your instrument. So like if you're trying to, imitate Elvis and you're going, you ain't nothing but a hound dog, and you feel the breath that has to jump a little bit, right? Then you can play around with, well, how does that happen? What am I doing with my breath? What am I doing with my vowels? What am I doing with the way that I sing that phrase? Then you can jump over and look at, another artist and imitate some of the things that they do and think, well, how are they doing that? Okay. And go through and listen to a bunch of variations of a song. And if you're doing that work, you should see some improvement. You're also going to run into some roadblocks, right? Because you're going to do something, you're going to realize, oh, I can't do that. And you're going to be tempted to push and squeeze. What I would say instead is come back over to our Facebook page or to our YouTube channel and go through some of the old archives and see if you can't find the answer to whatever it is that you're dealing with, right? If you're like, oh, I feel tightness in my throat. I've answered that question before. You can go learn about how your voice works in that way and how that tightness is being caused. And you can try those exercises out on your own. And more than likely, you're going to see some progress. But at some point in time, you might start getting stuck just trying to go down that YouTube rabbit hole, right? Because when we start going down that YouTube rabbit hole, you start getting a mix match of information and you're not quite sure what it is that you're hearing or what it is that you're doing. And so in that case, you're going to want to do one of two things. You're either going to want to try to get with a coach one-on-one, because when you work with a coach, they can be able to listen to you and say, hey, that's the issue right there. And this is the exercise that you need. And then you're going to be able to improve it. Or what you could do is try to do a little bit of self-study first by taking an online course. One like our online course, How the Voice Works, which you can see up there. There's a webinar you can jump onto through the website. You can also just check it out on the website. And in this course, what we do is show you exactly how your instrument is built, what it's made of, and how it works. And we show you variations and how those variations lead to different vocal qualities. And if you can start figuring out that information and understanding it and using the exercises that we include in the course, you're going to start to gain a much better understanding of your voice, and you will make a lot of progress. And you might be able to figure it all out on your own. But again, you might also get to the point where you're like, I need a coach. And we have all kinds of ways that we can connect you and match you to somebody who's going to be able to help you with that. So, it's a mix of people who are able to get the progress that they want on their own and not. I would say, that you're doing it okay as long as your voice is improving and not going backwards. So if you had high notes like a high G, and the next thing you know, that high G is really hard and the F sharp is starting to be your highest note. And you're like, maybe that's just my age or something's changing. And then you notice the F sharp's starting to get tough. Something's not going right. And you really should stop and get a professional consult because you might be doing some harm in there. Right? If you start noticing that your voice is taking on a raspy color that wasn't there, that's not a good sign. You should probably see a coach. If you notice that you're really limited in the dynamics, you can't get louder, you can't get softer, you feel stuck, also not a good sign. You probably want to get with a coach. And while you're doing the self-guided study, the final thing is to remember to never sing too high, too loud for too long, because that is the secret recipe for problems. Singing too loud, too high, too long will lead to things like vocal nodules, polyps, cysts, other things that can be detrimental to your vocal health, require you to go get, a laryngologist to, scope you to see what's actually happened, maybe voice therapy, maybe surgery, and we don't want that for you, right? So keep that in mind. Watch that everything's moving in the right direction. If it's moving in the wrong direction, take a break. If it continues to go in the wrong direction, consult somebody, get a little bit of help. Make sure you learn how the voice works, whether it's through my course or another course, because when you understand vocal function, you can get rid of a lot of technical issues in weeks or months instead of years, right? Many times the problems where I meet people that have been trying to do a vocal issue for years, they've been focusing only on placement, breath support, and posture, and those three things don't fix a lot of issues. You actually have to get in and retrain the vocal folds how to vibrate through exercises built on motor learning and exercise physiology principles. And when you do that work, you'll see changes fast because you're actually addressing the specific issue in your motor system that's keeping you from getting the results you want. Same thing goes for the respiratory system. You can talk about maintaining breath, but if you don't understand how body type influences things and how all the muscles interact, you may not be using the right breathing strategy, because the research suggests that there's a lot of strategies that work. There's not just one. And so you got to find the one that works for you. And then when you're dealing with resonance, we all have different vocal tract shapes depending on the length of our neck, the width of our mouth, all those things. There's even a study out there that shows that the distance between the bottom of your upper molar and the roof of your mouth, that depth actually has a big impact on vocal timbre. And so you've got to then, understand how that vocal tract is built and what parts are moving in there, so that when you're trying to improve your resonance to get a certain vowel quality or just vocal tone, that you're moving the right things to get the sounds that you're actually looking for. Because again, if you're just trying to put it somewhere and that's not the place that you're going to feel vibration, or if you're one of those people who doesn't feel any forward sensations at all, or you feel the correct sensations when making bad sounds, then that's not going to work. But if you can learn how your articulators work in your resonance and your vocal tract, you're going to be able to start drilling them to move in efficient movement patterns. And then you're going to be able to get whatever sound that it is that you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also I would say you could check our archives for we cover how to do warm-ups. So, I mean, if you're right now exploring things on your own, just start with the basics. Make sure you can warm your voice up in a safe, healthy way. And then pick a song that's maybe not a really challenging song, but a song that you feel like really confident that you can do, that's maybe within an octave, and really master that one song, right? And at some point, then you pick the next song. And if you make progress on your own, you're probably going to, like most people, it's okay. You're going to need a coach at some point. Now, there's the few natural rare, the 1 or 2% that they figure the whole thing out on their own. But I think, Matt, we've even talked about this in the past. A lot of the famous celebrities that claimed, I figured it out on their own, are maybe secretly studying with a coach. So it's okay at some point if you want to get started on your own, but it's okay to admit, hey, I need a guide, because at the end of the day, and we talked about this as well, we can't hear ourselves like somebody outside of our body would hear us, right? So that's ultimately what you're paying for with a coach is that knowledge, that guidance, and that wisdom, where somebody can hear what your voice is doing and guide you to what you need next. So I'd say it's great to get started on your own, but at some point you might need a coach, and it's okay to realize that and reach out and try and find one. So we've got hundreds on the platform, and we'd love to help you when you get there. Awesome. Let's jump into our next question. Question number 4 today comes in from Iris. How to best manage singing through the lower and upper passaggio, especially during the aging voice?
Good. So, Iris, this is a tricky question because everyone is different. And so it depends on the hormone balance in your body. It's usually women that we're talking about, biological women or estrogen dominant voices that we're talking about having to really deal with hormone changes. This terminology gets real tricky because we're talking about the commonly accepted term is becoming estrogen dominant voices. But as you age, sometimes your estrogen levels are dipping and you may see higher levels of other hormones overtaking. So now, even though you were born estrogen dominant, your larynx is starting to shift a little bit. And those shifts affect the surface of the vocal folds. The surface of the vocal folds is packed with hormone receptors, right? And so those, just like the other parts of your body that have hormone receptors and rely on changes in your body's hormone regulation to regulate how your body takes care of itself over your lifetime and your childbearing years. All of a sudden, when that changes through menopause, you're getting a different balance of hormones, and that can mess with your voice. If you're doing hormone replacement therapy, well, you're going to have a different experience than somebody who doesn't. And there's good arguments for both. That's an individual decision. On the testosterone dominant larynx side, we usually don't deal with a whole lot of changes through life. Yeah, we do deal with testosterone shifts. If you're working out, if you're taking supplements for working out, stuff like that can shift it. And there's other things that can shift you in other directions as well. We do know that testosterone dominant people tend to lose some of that testosterone with aging, and they may feel like there's some effect on their voice as well. Now, we did a whole interview on this topic with Dr. Karen Brunson, who's the author of, I think it's The Evolving Singing Voice. And she talks a lot about this nuance of what's actually happening. What I can tell you is that all of those changes are usually going to lead to thickening of the vocal folds. If you're asking this question, I'm assuming that's what's happening, because these are the kind of things that people usually are dealing with when that thickening of the vocal folds is happening. And so it's going to mean that whereas when you may have been, 15 years younger, it felt like you needed X amount of air to power your vocal folds, you might need X plus 50% at this point. Now, the reason is twofold. Not only are your vocal folds thickening and they might need a little bit more power to move, but your respiratory system is aging and the elasticity is decreasing, meaning that your lung capacity is changing. So as you get older, the vocal folds are getting thicker and your lung capacity is changing. So in the past, you may not have had to contract your abdominal wall to sing certain phrases, whereas as you age, you're going to have to start contracting your abdominal wall to give your body that extra little bit of power that it needs. Not only because the respiratory system is seeing changes, because the vocal folds are thickening as well. You're going to want to make sure, though, that even if it's a little bit emotionally uncomfortable to explore the uppermost part of your voice, you want to spend a lot of time each practice session doing that. That doesn't deal with these passaggio immediately, but it's going to get there. You're going to want to be up there to make sure that you're stretching that vocal fold and the ligament that runs inside of it. Because as we age, ligaments get stiffer too. Muscles get stiffer. We have to see atrophy and all those things. You want to be stretching those vocal folds to make sure that you have the ability to still get those high notes that you want. And to remind your body how to sing with less closure than you would be using in a speech-like quality. So we talked about this here at the top of the show, but it's that breathy, easy sound. You do it on ooh. Ooh. When your voice is aging, you're going to hit some point where it's just not going to come out. And a note that used to be there is going to
gone.
It will, right? And I hate to say that note was there 5 years ago. It's gone. Used to be able to sing Gethsemane. It's gone. I had my second child and quit practicing for like 6 months, and it went bye-bye, and it hasn't come back. So getting old, it does have things that come along for the ride that aren't necessarily the best for us singers. But that's why it's important, like to, if you aren't to the point yet where some of these changes are happening, really work on developing that upper register throughout the process of any changes that are going on, because it can sometimes be easier for people if they're practicing throughout that time versus coming to it later in life. But so you're up there, you're stretching things, you're getting air to flow, and then you're going to want to take that as low as it'll go into your range. So you're taking it down to the bottommost notes. Then what you're going to do is make sure that you have the other muscles also getting exercise. Those are the muscles that close the vocal folds together, that give us enough closure to get buzz in the voice. So that's going to be going down here in a nice firm ah sound. Ah. That's strengthening the muscle that helps bring the vocal folds together. You're going to take that up as high as comfortable and then take it back down. If that's hard for you to get at first, you can use staccato and do ha, 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 ha. And if you've never really made these sounds before, it's probably going to feel like it's volume 10. It might even feel like it's shouting or yelling. We prefer to call that calling, because what we're learning from research is more than likely the first humans developed this powerful vocal quality to call across long distances to communicate with others in a pre-cell phone era. So it's a yell or a scream is emotionally driven. It's harsh. It's angry. This shouldn't be that. This should just be the same as going, hey, you see a friend across the street and go, hi, right? It's just that kind of a quality. Ha, 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 ha. That gets the vocal folds to engage. Now, after you get those vocal folds to engage, you're going to want to start teaching them to transition between those two opposite qualities. So you're going to want to work on trying to fade from a full sound to a breathy sound. Ah. Then you're going to see if you can start from that light breathy sound and go to the full. Ah. And then you see if you can go both ways. Ah. And do the opposite as well. That's going to start setting you up to deal with these passagios. Because what's happening in the passagio points, there's two things. There is a vowel shift that's often happening. We'll deal with that in a second. But there's also a vocal fold shift, especially depending on where you're talking about in your range, and if you're belting or if you're singing something that's got a more classical head dominant quality. But there are different points in our body where the ratio of that thyroarytenoid muscle contraction, the muscle inside the vocal fold, and then the other muscle, they're varying. And it gets real complicated with the way that it carries over, transfers the resistance to the vocal ligament, and that's real bumpy. Well, trying to deal with that only on notes without having these two anchor spots is nearly impossible, because you literally do not have the ability to finesse that zone of your voice by adding a little bit more vibration or taking a little bit away. So that's why we want to do those exercises on sustained pitches. Then we want to start doing glides below the passaggio. So we're going from here, like, ah. Then we start working into the passaggio. Ah. And see how light we can go through there. Then when we know we can easily get through it, we can start to add a little bit of fire to it, a little bit more vocal fold closure. So going, ah, until you find the quality that you're looking for there. Now, as I said, vowel quality does come into play here as well. We, just like I talked about the larynx, we have opposites. We have low larynx, we have a high larynx. Well, we have open vowels and we have closed vowels. So I can do a real open, let's say, O vowel. So we'll do, oh. And then we also want to do the opposite with the closed vowel. Oh. And then we can try to find something in the middle. Oh. Now, if you're coming up to a problem spot in one of these transition points, what we call passagios, then what you're going to want to do is try the different vowels. So let's say you're doing the glides, and the glide feels like it's almost working, but not quite. Think about what vowel quality you're using, and then try a different one. So if you're going, well, I've been using a bright ah, great, try a dark ah, closed ah. And then if that seems too much like it's choking you off, start opening it back up again and see if you can't find a sweet spot, right? Or the opposite. You're like, maybe it's too close, I'm getting stuck. Oh, and I feel like I'm locked. Then open it wide up. Oh, see if that helps. You may hear that sound and go, yeah, that's not the sound quality I want, but that felt better. Great. We're going with the feeling, not the sound. We can refine the sound, but we need freedom first. So if that feels better, we're going to run with it and then start to slowly warm that vowel up until we reach our goal. So going on until you find what you want. Okay? If you go through that process, moving through these passagios, you are likely to stumble upon some things that help, right? If not, I want to recommend that you go see somebody who specializes in the aging voice. Not all voice teachers. I don't even consider myself a specialist in this area because there's more to it than just pure voice function. There's also an artistry component, because one of the things that happens as we get older is we have more life experience, which opens us up to singing songs that have more depth of experience and life experience. And that's a different kind of storytelling. It's tapping into real deep personal experiences. You want to work with somebody who can help you with that. You're going to also have a lot of times an emotional reaction to all of this work, everything I just said. And when you try to do it on your own voice, because I have worked with plenty of aging singers who have been in the same spot that you're talking about, and there's a strong emotional component to it. Especially if you're used to singing, you're going, but this used to be easy and I can't do this anymore. And, there's ways to process that and to work through it. And you want to be with a specialist who can connect you with either other singers who have been in your same shoes and gotten to the other side where everything's feeling great and they're really happy with their career. And they can put you into support groups where you can share what's going on and you can get advice and you can figure things out. And they oftentimes know medical teams in the area who can, do an evaluation with you and see if there's any other medical interventions that may be, useful to you. And it could be like on a medical thing. It could even not be medication. It could be that in an evaluation, they realize you're starting to get a little bit of osteoporosis, and that's impacting the way your rib cage sits in your body. And because your rib cage isn't sitting the same way that it used to, it's making it harder for you to breathe. And that's why you feel like you're not in the best shape right now, or you had a back injury that's getting in the way. And that physical therapist can help you work through that and get your body into a better place and show you exercises to maintain that place. Right? So there's a lot of stuff that goes into this. And that's why I really recommend a specialist in the aging voice and not just a generalist. But the good news is that a lot of these people that I've worked with who started off really stumbling are back to singing and feeling great about it. And so, it's definitely emotionally taxing, but keep going at it if it's something you love and something that you want to do, because there are definitely strategies and ways to cope and ways to get through it so you can keep singing through the rest of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Matt, you give so many great examples and exercises, but keeping the voice flexible, I think, is the most important thing as we age. So even myself now, I turned 40 this year. So it's not like I was 16 anymore. So, hey, we're getting up there.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, let's jump into our next question. This one comes in from Christian. So he writes in, when I lead worship and praise, is it possible to use alto, tenor, and soprano in one song?
Yeah. So this is an interesting question because that's a huge range, and really the answer varies person to person. So there are some people that have 4 or 5 octave ranges. It can be insane. I've got one estrogen dominant singer right now that has like this low D. That's almost it is a baritone D, but yet can get all the way up to that high soprano D with no problem. Right. And they also have a couple whistle tone pitches. That's insane. Right. So for that person, the answer to this is yes, because that person happens to be able to belt and to sing soprano. So yeah, they can carry up a real chesty sound up into parts of that tenor range, and they can make a tenor sound. They can warm up and not carry as much vocal fold closure up into that alto range, and they can make some alto sounds. And then they can really lighten up and extend all the way up into their soprano range and even into the whistle tone range with their voice. Now, that student is a rarity. That's not that common. There are people who have smaller versions of that. And so if you go back into music history, these terms, alto, tenor, soprano, they were used to describe voices, but they were also used to describe instruments. I mean, there's an alto sax, a tenor sax, a soprano sax, right? So we have actual instruments that aren't voices that definitely have these labels applied to them as well. So in the treble clef, which is everything below middle C, is where we usually associate baritone bass instruments and the beginning of tenor instruments. Tenor instruments usually span an octave above that middle C. Now, people who sing tenor tend to sing with, depending on what style it is, once they get to this E and F, they got to start making some choices on that E and F above middle C, whether or not they are going to keep their vowels more round, warm, and dark, or if they're going to keep them bright. And so if you want to be able to make tenor sounds, you're going to want to see how agile you can get your articulators, your resonance, your vocal tracks, so you can make some vowel adjustments along the way. And you can keep it brighter on the way up if you want to get like that heroic sound, that heroic tenor sound, that hum, that really bright one versus the hum, kind of darker tenor sound, okay? And so you're going to want to be able to make those vowel changes to do that. Now, for an alto voice, unless you're belting, you're not usually going to carry up that bright vowel. So you are going to start to warm up your vowels below middle C. So maybe at that A below middle C, and you're going to keep some warmth on the way up. And that warmth is probably going to take you up to that G or A, which is where most alto lines usually go up to max, but it kind of puts you there in the middle. And then if you want to do soprano, then you're going to, soprano voices vary. And with all these things I'm saying, there's tons of shades of gray. But sopranos don't usually carry up as much warmth as altos do. In a general sense, there are a lot of exceptions to that, what I just said. But in a general sense, a soprano voice maybe has a little bit of a brighter vowel quality going all the way up to the top. Okay? So here's the thing, though, at the end of the day. What you're looking for is your own voice and expanding your ability to sing throughout your range. Now, and that's again, on these one line, one sentence questions, it's hard to know if you did mean, well, I want to imitate what a traditional alto, a traditional tenor, a traditional soprano sound is. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're just asking about, can I sing the notes in those ranges? And if that's the question, then yeah, that should be fairly easy. You're just going to have to figure out what is in a pure head voice or a pure falsetto, and versus what's in pure chest voice and what's in there versus a mix. So we're going to do this. Keep that really nice breathy hooty sound in the upper part of your voice to stretch that vocal fold to get you up into the soprano range. That's that age on my voice showing up. I don't want to go higher than that anymore. But if you're young, you can probably get up a little bit higher than that, which is technically getting you into that soprano range. Then as you go down, you're going to see how low you can carry that. Then you're going to want to see how high you can carry that chesty range. And then you're going to want to figure out how much you can carry up variations of mix. Can you do a lighter mix? Can you do a heavier mix? Can you do a real heavy one? Figure out what variations you're capable of doing. And then again, if you're trying to sing in different parts of your range, you can decide which one applies in that moment. But what I would encourage you to do, Christian, for Praise and Worship Band is explore every sound quality you're capable of making, and then let the words lead the way. Let the story lead the way. We know in moments of celebration, voices tend to be brighter and they tend to be more chest dominant with a wider vibrato in it, because that's what excitement does. So in a praise and worship song that's celebrating, you're going to have brighter vowels, more vibrato, more chest dominance, maybe a louder voice. And something that's more introspective, more prayerful, more solemn. Usually when people speak in any one of those moods or settings, what's going to happen is the voice is going to get a little quieter, a little breathier. They're going to have less vibrato. They're going to sustain notes for a shorter amount of time, and it's not going to be as loud. And so what you're going to want to do is make sure you have all of those qualities available to you too for those songs. And then, of course, everything in the middle. And ideally, you want to have the ability to switch between all those qualities in a single song.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of styling here that I'm just imagining using a big, wide voice. You got to do a lot of different, really interpretation, like you're saying. Let the text lead the way. So, Christian, send us a note. I'm curious what song you're singing because I'd love to follow you. So, let's jump into our next question. This one comes in from Mel. They write in, what is the best
probably way
to sing the song that has a lot of low ranges?
Yeah. So Mel, this goes back to a little bit of what we were just talking about with this last question, which is essentially getting into the lower part of your register and strengthening and developing that part of your voice. Now, for the low range, you're going to be in a pretty strong chest dominant vocal quality. And what we're going to do is find where you think the beginning of your current lower range is. So I'm just going to pick the C. And what we're going to do is go maybe a note below that, and we're just going to try to sustain it out. Going, ah. Now, as we sustain that, we want to take body scan of ourselves and think, how's my posture? Am I aligned? I'm not right now. So while I'm singing that, I probably ought to fix my line.
You're leaning over, you're tipping.
You heard that already started to change it. So then I got to think to myself as I sustain this pitch, am I breathing? And right now I'm not thinking about my breathing. So now I want to take a better breath with my better alignment. Then I want to look at what's happening in my vocal tract and think, is anything getting in the way? Is my too dark? Is my tongue trying to retract? What's it doing? And all of a sudden you heard it got a little bit more vibrancy. That vibrancy tells me that the vocal folds are vibrating nice and efficiently and the vocal tract isn't getting in the way. We can refine the sound later. This is an exercise sound. So I'm not saying that's my final quality. That's an exercise quality. An exercise quality that gets my vocal folds vibrating well with a balanced body, a good breath, with the respiratory management happening, and a vocal tract that's free and relaxed. Then I'm just going to start taking that down on sustained pitches and holding it as long as I can before it gets tight or it just feels like I'm done. Let me keep repeating all the way down. At some point, we're going to really start feeling it trying to fall apart, and you just want to relax into that. You want to remember that the lower you go, the more air that's going to be released, right? Your vocal folds are vibrating slower, more air is going to end up coming through per second. Again, you might want to change vowels along the way. And you're going to start to bottom out eventually like that. And when you bottom out, you want to take note of where that's at and just live there a couple times. If you go back to initiate and it doesn't want to come together, go up 2 pitches. And start going back down. If you're finding it hard on sustained pitches, start bringing it down. Just doing that 3, 2, 1. And see where you can get. If it falls apart and flaps in the air, that's okay. Make sure it's just doing it with freedom. What may happen with time is that note will improve as you continue to practice it every day. Or you may discover that's your physiological max and you're just not going to get any other notes down there. And that's okay. We all have our own individual ranges. And usually if you, don't have a low range, it's because you got a great high range. Or if you got a great low range, it's because you don't have a high range. Then, right? I have high notes, but not the tenor ones I wish I had. But that's what you're going to want to do. And just spend every day just doing that kind of work, is just getting those sounds to vibrate within you. Feel the vibrations, feel the release of air, work on sustaining them. Because what that's doing is it's coordinating, stabilizing, and strengthening the muscles in your larynx that are responsible for holding the vocal folds together and maintaining a pitch. And as you improve your motor skills surrounding that particular technical approach down there, it's going to get easier to put it into a song. So that way, when you get into a song that goes real low, I hear that train a-rolling. You don't even have to think about it. You've been vocalizing down there so much, it just pops right out, right? The worst thing to do is just try to start singing the song and think it's going to just take care of itself within a song. And that goes for any technical issue. If you're working on a technical issue in a song and trying to use a song as a way to solve the technical issue, it's usually going to lead to having that song tied up in a knot in your head. You're going to be so tied up in a knot about that technical thing that you're trying to do that the song is going to be really hard for you to tell a story with. So it's better to do technical work and technical exercises and then apply that exercise to a song that is you're capable of doing now. But like as a teacher, if I know that the song's got a closed O vowel in the upper part of the range, I'm not going to pick the song to just start working on that closed O vowel. I'm going to work on the closed O vowel first and then be like, hey, here's a song that has that actual issue. I think you're ready for it because you've been doing really well at figuring out how to release that O. Take them up to that O, and usually it'll work because we've been doing it in the vocalizing first. But if you try to jump right in and go, oh, you have problems with closing your O's? I know the perfect song. Let's do that. Yeah, you'll probably get that O to get better by working on it, but you're going to have that song so technically like tied up in your mind that when you go to try to tell a story and just perform the song, you're going to probably always be worried about what it sounds like, what you're doing, if you're approaching it technically correct, and it's just going to tie you up. So I'd play around with the other approach, see where it takes you, and let us know.
Yeah, one other thing I'll add, and this is from, I'm not a baritone, so as a tenor, I didn't have a great chest voice, and I've used this technique with some students as well. And that is, if you're a lighter, higher voice, work on your low voice in the morning. Now you have to kind of have the right apartment or the home, and don't wake, obviously don't wake everyone up at 6 a.m. But if if you do it at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. before your body's, really kind of woken up, if you will, you get a couple extra notes down there, which helps those of us that have the higher voices, right? So we get a couple extra notes, and you can use that to help strengthen your chest voice down there. Now, Matt, I'll lean to you if like what the science is behind that, but I just know like people have lower ranges in the morning. So it's kind of a way you can use nature, just use the fact that your body's been at rest. It's not fully warmed up yet. And you get one or two extra notes down there, and that can help you get more confidence in those low notes. So
absolutely. Great idea. Like it.
Cool. All right. Let me check the chat that we have here.
Joe Exotic stopped by.
Hey, Joe. Yes. We're working for you now, Joe, I guess I don't know where you're going with that, but sure. And then Vito has a real question. So thanks, Vito. Let's drop this one in. So does a Christian metal singer use a high pitch? So I don't know if you want to talk about metal.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it depends what you're trying to do. They're going up into the higher part of the range a lot. If you're trying to bring like scream stuff into it, you definitely still want to be working that light approach, that because that's eventually, if we're going for the real high, like metal sounds, the screams, that's built off of that quality. That is where it comes into that. I love God.
Yeah, that's not from your chest voice. That's more from like a falsetto pharyngeal that you're leaning down or pressing down into.
Yeah. And so that's the kind of thing that's going to carry up into there. And so you can also then press. I don't know if I can do it after a day of teaching. We'll see. The hey, we can get a little bit of that grit on it as well, right? So you're leaning into that on those high notes, but you want to have that flexibility and the freedom of the fry to bring down in to get that gritty quality in there. Pardon me. And that comes from working on that head voice falsetto quality. And so, metal singers are going to use some of those more high-pitched strategies when they're on the upper part of their range. Their larynx may go higher, but some metal singers will go for more of a neutral laryngeal position. It gives them a depth that they like in their sound. So also wanting to make sure that you have a free larynx, and then making sure that your articulators are free enough that you can, spread it or round it to get whatever timbre it is you're looking for.
Great. All right, Vito, hopefully that helps you out. I'm going to check. I think we've got all the questions we have planned for today. So I don't see any other questions from you guys. So I just want to say thanks for tuning in. You got about 5 seconds to drop your question in. Otherwise, we're going to call it. So I just want to say this is a great Thursday. I think we're getting near more people getting vaccinated. So do your civic duty, guys. Sign up. Go get your shots. I've got my second one coming up. And Matt, did you get your shots?
I've been back. I got lucky in my town. I was able to get vaccinated early on. So I had both shots, had no reaction other than maybe a hint of fatigue, but I got 2 kids. It just kind of felt like sleep well tonight.
Yeah.
So, but I know plenty of people who haven't had a reaction and very few that have had, fever chills. But you know what? What we're learning is that there's definitely long-term lung damage, even with maybe some asymptomatic people. There is long-term heart damage with some asymptomatic people. And a scary thing for musicians is I have 2 students right now with some hearing loss, and they're not quite sure where it's coming from. And my wife randomly said to me, "Do you think it's COVID?" And I was like, "I doubt it, but I'll look." And so I jumped into a medical journal, and guess what they're finding that COVID is causing?
Wow.
Hearing loss.
Well, I just say sign up for your shot, everyone. Sign up for your shot.
Sign up and take care of yourself, because I mean it's a real thing. We know somebody here in my town that was on a ventilator for 3 months. He'll never talk again. He was on a ventilator for so long, he will never speak again. Not in his normal way. Has a child, a family, not a singer, but that ain't worth it. He thought it wasn't real, wasn't really a big threat, and he was wrong. So please take care of yourself. And, you definitely don't want to end up on the other side of that. Christina, thanks for stopping. Yeah, we're happy to do this. I'll answer Jordan real quick. Do you have some ideas for how to find the balance between over singing and under singing? Yeah, that's tricky. One thing is I would say to you is let the microphone do some of the work. So many singers forget that this mic is responsible for the amplification outside of classical or operatic singing. And even in classical and operatic singing, people have the wrong idea about how much effort it actually takes to fill an opera hall. It's not what you think. People end up approaching it with effort and they use muscle. Well, muscle, if you're using muscle in your throat by forcing those vocal folds together, you're actually limiting the release of air. And sound is created by moving air molecules. So in order to make a big sound, you actually have to move air molecules. So doing a really pressed, where you feel like you're really working at it. It feels great. It feels like you're making a lot of sound, but you're not because you're not moving air. But if you find more of that sound inside of it, that's how you fill up a hall. And that feels like 70% of the effort of the other one. Now, in rock sounds and rock singing, a lot of times I hear people, they'll be in, we both lie silent and still. And you put it up on a mic and it gets loud. We both lie. It's overblowing the mic. So you need to get with a microphone and practice with it. And what you want to do is set up the mic at a volume that you think you would like, and then see how little effort you can use and still get the vocal quality you want.
It's surprisingly a fraction, like maybe 10, 20% sometimes. You're like, wow, I could get that done, and I was barely breathing.
Yeah, right? That's why I got that Bose tower back there in the corner. I use that when I, in person, when I have students in person, I get them on the mic, and I turn it up as loud as I can get
a PA and a
mic,
right? And do some sound checks, okay?
And then so that way you don't even, it's not going to feed back. Now, I know not everybody has, a PA system lying around or the ability to get one. So find something that's a hard surface, like a book. Here's a whiteboard. Hold it in front of your face like that and sing and get it up close. That's going to ricochet the sound right back at you. And it's going to give you a similar effect to a microphone. Turn it horizontal. That way you got even more sound bouncing into your ears. And then you can practice seeing how little you can get away with. Hey. That sounds like good on a mic. I can tell from the sound that's bouncing to me that's going to give me that breathy quality on a mic. But without it there, that hey seems like nothing. So you want to realize the mic is doing some of that work. When you listen to recordings, you want to keep in mind that you're hearing multiples of a person's voice. They often stack vocals. So it's not uncommon. I know I have an article about Boyz II Men, the band, and they would record their own vocal tracks 6 times each, and then they would stack all 5 of them. And they would stack those vocals all together. So you had 30 voices in the choruses to make them really pop. So we think that's just the person's voice. It's not. It's a stack. There's also other things that we can use, like a doubler that'll make it seem like it's 2 of you singing. There's tricks you can do with delay to thicken a voice to make it seem like more people are singing as well. So, on those recordings, they're using a lot of our audio processing, digital technology as a part of their artistry to create the sounds you're hearing. So don't let that deceive you. A lot of times they're really not singing that loud, right? Because you can't survive 2 and 3 hour gigs all along the way. So trust the mic and, see how little you can get away with, and then start incrementally moving up from there, and never sing at 100%. Always sing at 80%.
Absolutely. Save a little bit for the next time.
Yeah.
Because if you leave it all out there right now, you don't want to sing on your capital. You want to sing on your interest.
Yeah. And the thing is that if you when adrenaline kicks in the moment, you're going to sing a little more. So that's why you need to practice at only 75, 80%. Because when that adrenaline kicks in, you might hit 100. And you'll notice it, though, because you'll be like, man, I practice all the time. That was too much, because I know what feels good. That was too much. Whereas if you practice all the time at 100% and adrenaline kicks in, you end up screaming and yelling and pushing, and that swells up your vocal folds. And then when you're like, wow, I just oversang, I got to back off, you try to go to 100% and you can't, because you swelled up your vocal folds. And by swelling up your vocal folds, you now can't get into the light place you need. And now you're in a real bad pickle, because you got the rest of your set to keep singing through, and you can't. So the only way you can do it is to push through it. But pushing through it's going to make you lose your voice. So then you try to undersing, and you can't get the notes out because your vocal folds are swollen. So that's just a bad recipe for nothing but problems. But if you live at that 75 to 80% rule, then even if you hit 100%, you're not in that extreme stress place where you're yelling, screaming, and swelling up those folds. You're just using them a little bit too much too quick. You can usually catch yourself and be like, oh, pushed on that song. I'm going to take this one even easier, reset, and you'll be just fine.
Yeah, great. All right. So, Jordan, hopefully that helps you. Thanks for tuning in, by the way. Yes, Christina, we enjoy doing these. Thanks for tuning in and learning along with us and everyone. So, hey, everyone, it's been an hour. We got to call it today. If you got questions, drop them in. We actually have a link, I think, on the event we posted today. But you can ask us your question. You can just, I think we send out an email to everyone on the list to ask us your question. We're happy to help. And thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Have a great week. And we'll see you next time.
All right. See you next week.
Bye-bye.